Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm 74 years old now, and 5 years ago I watched my fixed income get devoured by rising prices, while I felt completely helpless to stop it. Today I want to share how one shocking grocery store receipt opened my eyes to the silent wealth destroyer that's targeting retirees everywhere, and the 5 specific steps that saved my financial future from inflation's grip. The receipt that changed everything. March 2020. I'm standing at the checkout line of my neighborhood grocery store, the same store I'd shopped at for 15 years. The cashier hands me my receipt, and I glance down expecting to see the usual $60 to $70 for my weekly groceries. $127.43. I stared at that number, convinced there'd been a mistake. Same items I always bought, same store, same quantities. But somehow, my grocery bill had nearly doubled in what felt like overnight. "Excuse me," I said to the cashier. "I think there might be an error." She gave me a tired smile. "Sir, I hear that about 50 times a day now. Everything's more expensive. Haven't you been watching the news?" Walking to my car, receipt still in my shaking hand, a terrifying realization hit me. If my groceries had doubled, what was happening to everything else? More importantly, what was this doing to my retirement savings that I'd worked 37 years to build? That night, I did the math that kept me awake until 4 a.m. My monthly expenses, $3,200, my fixed income, $3,400, my cushion, $200. If inflation continued at this pace, I'd be in the red within months. My supposedly safe retirement was about to become a financial disaster. The wake-up call from Margaret. The next morning, desperate for answer, I called my neighbor Margaret at 78. She'd been retired longer than anyone I knew, and somehow she always seemed financially secure despite living through multiple economic crises. "Margaret," I said, "are you seeing what I'm seeing at the grocery store? How are you managing this?" There was a pause, then a chuckle. "Oh, Harold, you mean inflation? Honey, I've been preparing for this since the 1970s. This isn't my first rodeo." Preparing? How do you prepare for something like this? "Would you like to come over for coffee? I think it's time someone taught you what they don't tell you in those retirement planning seminars." An hour later, I'm sitting in Margaret's kitchen, watching her pull out a binder labeled Inflation Defense Strategy in her neat handwriting. "Harold," she said, opening to the first page, "inflation is like a slow leak in your tire. By the time you notice it, you've already lost significant air pressure. But unlike a tire, you can't just pump more air in. You need to change your entire approach to money." What she showed me next would transform my understanding of retirement finances forever. Margaret's 1970s lesson. "Let me tell you about 1979, Margaret began, pouring coffee from a pot that smelled like heaven. "Jimmy Carter was president, interest rates hit 20%, and inflation was eating people alive. I watched my friends' retirement savings evaporate while they sat there doing nothing, hoping it would get better." She flipped to a page of newspaper clippings from that era. Headlines screamed about economic crisis, soaring prices, and retirees returning to work out of desperation. My husband George and I were 45 then. We'd been saving diligently, following all the traditional advice: put money in savings accounts, buy bonds, keep everything safe. We watched our purchasing power disappear, month after month. Margaret's finger traced a graph she'd hand-drawn, showing inflation rates from 1975 to 1985. That's when I realized something that changed everything. Traditional retirement advice assumes inflation will stay low forever. But history shows that's rarely true. Every generation faces at least one major inflationary period. The question isn't if, it's when, and will you be ready? She looked directly at me. Harold, you're facing what we faced 40 years ago. The difference is, I learned 5 specific strategies that protected us then, and they're protecting me now. Would you like me to teach them to you? The 5-step inflation defense system. Margaret spent the next 3 hours explaining what she called her inflation defense system, 5 specific steps that had protected her wealth through 4 decades of economic uncertainty. This isn't theory, she explained. This is battle-tested strategy from someone who's actually lived through multiple inflationary periods and come out stronger each time. Here's what she taught me. Step 1. Convert fixed assets to growing assets. Step 2. Create inflation-adjusted income streams. Step 3. Build strategic stockpiles. Step 4. Leverage debt wisely. Step 5. Maintain emergency liquidity. Each step serves a specific purpose, Margaret explained. Together, they create a fortress that not only survives inflation, but actually profits from it. The skeptic in me wanted to dismiss this as too complicated for someone my age, but watching Margaret's calm confidence while I was panicking made me realize she knew something I desperately needed to learn. Step 1. Convert fixed assets to growing assets. Harold, what percentage of your retirement funds are in fixed income investments? Margaret asked. I calculated quickly. About 80%, CDS, bonds, treasury bills. My financial advisor said it was the safe approach for someone my age. Margaret shook her head. That advice will destroy you during inflation. Fixed income investments are inflation's favorite target. While your CD pays 2% interest, inflation steals 8% of your purchasing power. You're losing 6% per year on money you thought was safe. She showed me her portfolio allocation from 1979 versus 2020. The changes were dramatic. During high inflation, you need assets that grow faster than prices rise. This means carefully selected stocks, real estate, and commodities, things that increase in value as the dollar weakens. Margaret's 1979 move, she moved 60% of their fixed income investments into dividend-paying stocks of companies that could raise prices with inflation, utilities, consumer staples, and REITs. Margaret's 2020 move, she increased positions in energy stocks, agricultural commodities, and international funds when inflation signals appeared. The key, she explained, is these companies don't just survive inflation, they benefit from it. When Coca-Cola raises prices, their profits increase. When apartment rents rise, REITs collect more income. You want to own pieces of businesses that can pass higher costs to customers. My first action, I moved $50,000 from CDs, paying 1.5%, into a diversified portfolio of dividend-paying stocks averaging 4% yields from companies with 20-plus-year histories of raising dividends annually. Result after 18 months. While my CDs would have generated $750 in interest, my dividend stocks provided $2,400 in income, plus $8,300 in capital gains as inflation pushed stock values higher. Step 2. Create inflation-adjusted income streams. Fixed income is dangerous during inflation, Margaret continued, but adjustable income is your best friend. She showed me her income sources. Social Security automatically adjusts for inflation. Rental property lease increases annually. Part-time consulting, hourly rates increase with market. Royalties from books, she wrote. Passive income that compounds. Small business income. Prices adjust with costs. The pattern, she explained, is income that grows with or faster than inflation. When prices rise, these income sources rise too. Margaret's rental property strategy fascinated me. She'd bought a duplex in 1985, lived in one unit, and rented the other. Every year, she increased rent by the rate of inflation plus 2%. My mortgage payment stayed the same for 30 years, she said, but my rental income tripled. By the time I paid off the mortgage, I had a cash-flowing asset that generated inflation-protected income. My implementation. I used my home's equity to purchase a small rental property in a growing area. The monthly rent covers the mortgage, plus generates $400 cash flow that I increase annually. I also started a small consulting business, helping local businesses with bookkeeping, something I'd done for 40 years, but never monetized. This gave me income I could adjust based on current market rates. Unexpected benefit. These new income streams didn't just protect against inflation. They accelerated my wealth building in ways I'd never experienced with traditional retirement savings. Step 3. Build strategic stockpiles. Harold, what did you do when you first heard about COVID lockdowns? Margaret asked. I went to the store and bought extra toilet paper and canned goods like everyone else. Exactly. You instinctively understood that when supply gets disrupted and demand increases, prices rise. But you only applied this thinking to a crisis. I apply it constantly. Margaret walked me to her basement storage room. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with everything from canned goods to cleaning supplies to personal care items. This isn't hoarding, she explained. This is strategic purchasing. I buy 6 months' worth of non-perishable necessities when they're on sale, or before price increases hit. Her system was incredibly organized. Quarterly bulk purchases of household staples during sales. Annual purchase of next year's gifts during post-holiday clearances. Seasonal buying of next year's clothing during end-of-season sales. Strategic stockpiling of items before predicted price increases. Last year, I bought 12 months' worth of coffee when I heard Brazil had crop problems. Coffee prices increased 40% over the next 6 months, but I'd already locked in my cost. The math was compelling. If inflation runs 8% annually, but you can buy 1 year's worth of necessities at current prices, you're earning an 8% tax-free return on that money by avoiding price increases. My implementation. I started with 3 months of non-perishable household items, expanding to 6 months as I identified good deals. I track prices using a simple notebook system Margaret taught me. Results. In 18 months, I've avoided approximately $1,200 in price increases on items I would have bought anyway. That's like earning 8% tax-free on $15,000. Step 4. Leverage debt wisely. Harold, how do you feel about debt in retirement? Margaret asked. Terrible. My advisor said to pay off everything and live debt-free. Margaret smiled. That's good advice during low inflation. It's terrible advice during high inflation. She explained something that completely reversed my thinking. During inflation, debt becomes your friend if you structure it correctly. You borrow dollars that are worth 100 cents today, but you pay them back with dollars worth 85 cents next year. Margaret's 1979 strategy instead of paying off their 6% mortgage when inflation hit 13%. They used extra money to buy rental properties with new mortgages. We were borrowing at 12% when inflation was 13%. The bank was paying us 1% to take their money, plus we got tax deductions for the interest. Her current strategy: she maintains a home equity line of credit at 4% interest, available if she needs to make purchases during inflationary spikes. The key is good debt versus bad debt. Good debt is fixed rate, tax deductible, secured by appreciating assets. Bad debt is variable rate, non-deductible, used for consumption. My implementation: instead of paying off my 3.5% mortgage early, I used that money to invest in assets yielding 7%. The 3.5% spread provides additional income, while inflation erodes the real value of my mortgage debt. I also established a home equity line of credit for strategic opportunities. When supply chain issues caused appliance prices to spike, I used it to buy a new washer and dryer before prices increased another 20%. The psychology shift was dramatic. Instead of fearing debt, I learned to use it strategically as a hedge against inflation. Step 5. Maintain emergency liquidity. The final piece, Margaret said, is maintaining enough cash for opportunities and emergencies, but not so much that inflation destroys it. She showed me her liquid reserve strategy. 3 months' expenses in high-yield savings, 2.5% APY, 3 months' expenses in I-bonds, inflation-adjusted treasury bonds, 6 months' expenses in short-term treasury bills. Rates adjust quickly. This gives me 1 year of expenses in liquid form, but structured so inflation can't destroy the purchasing power. Margaret's I-bond strategy particularly impressed me. These government bonds pay a fixed rate plus the actual inflation rate, guaranteeing your purchasing power stays intact. I've been buying $10,000 in I-bonds every year since 2010, she said. When inflation spiked to 9%, my I-bonds were paying 9.6%. Try finding that return in a savings account. My implementation: I restructured my emergency fund using Margaret's 3-tier approach. The I-bonds required a 1-year commitment, but knowing my purchasing power was protected provided incredible peace of mind. I also learned about Treasury inflation-protected securities, TIPS, bonds that adjust their principal based on inflation rates. These became part of my fixed income allocation, replacing traditional bonds that lose value during inflation. The 90-day implementation. Walking home from Margaret's house, I felt overwhelmed but energized. For the first time since seeing that grocery receipt, I had a plan that made sense. Margaret gave me homework. Don't try to implement everything at once. Take 90 days and focus on 1 step at a time. Steady progress beats overwhelming yourself. Days 1 through 20, assessment and step 1. I spent the first 3 weeks analyzing my current allocation and researching dividend-paying stocks. Margaret introduced me to her broker, who specialized in helping retirees transition from fixed income to growth strategies. The hardest part was overcoming decades of safe investment conditioning, but seeing how inflation was destroying my purchasing power made the risk of staying put far greater than the risk of changing. Days 21 through 40. Step 2. Income streams. I researched rental properties in my area and started my consulting business. The rental property search took longer than expected, but I found a perfect duplex through Margaret's real estate connections. Starting the consulting business was easier than anticipated. My first client was my former employer, who needed help training their new bookkeeper. Word spread quickly through professional networks I'd built over 4 decades. Days 41 through 60, Step 3, Strategic Stockpiles. Margaret helped me organize my first bulk shopping trip. We visited restaurant supply stores, wholesale clubs, and discount retailers. I learned to calculate cost per unit and identify genuine deals versus marketing tricks. Setting up storage required reorganizing my basement, but the peace of mind was worth the effort. Having 6 months of essentials protected against both supply disruptions and price increases. Days 61 through 80. Step 4. Debt strategy.
This step required the most mindset adjustment. After 40 years of believing all debt was bad, learning to use leverage strategically felt counterintuitive.
Margaret introduced me to her accountant, who helped me understand the tax implications and structure debt properly. The home equity line of credit provided flexibility I'd never had before. Days 81 through 90. Step 5. Liquidity management. Restructuring my emergency fund was straightforward, but required patience. I-bonds could only be purchased in $10,000 annual increments, so I started with Treasury bills while planning future I-bond purchases. Learning about TIPS and how they worked required studying, but Margaret's broker explained them clearly. Replacing traditional bonds with inflation-protected bonds made logical sense once I understood the mechanics. Results after 2 years. Today, 2 years after that shocking grocery receipt, my financial situation has completely transformed. Traditional portfolio. Before, monthly income $3,400, fixed. Emergency fund $25,000, losing 8% annually to inflation. Investments 80% fixed income, vulnerable to inflation. Real estate, only primary residence. Additional income, none. Inflation-proof portfolio. After monthly income, $4,800, adjustable. Emergency fund, $30,000, inflation-protected structure. Investments, 40% fixed income, inflation-adjusted, 60% growth assets. Real estate, primary residence plus rental property. Additional income, consulting business, rental income. The transformation goes beyond numbers. Psychological change. Instead of worrying about inflation, I'm positioned to benefit from it. Rising prices increase my rental income, dividend stocks, and consulting rates. Flexibility. Multiple income streams provide options. If one source faces problems, others continue generating cash flow. Growth trajectory. My wealth is increasing faster than inflation, actually improving my standard of living during a period when most retirees are struggling. Common fears and how to address them. During my transformation, I faced every fear that prevents retirees from protecting themselves against inflation. I'm too old to take investment risks. The biggest risk during inflation is doing nothing. Safe, fixed-income investments guarantee purchasing power loss when inflation exceeds returns. Age requires smart risks, not zero risks. I don't understand stocks and real estate. Neither did I. Margaret introduced me to professionals who explained everything in simple terms. You don't need to become an expert. You need to work with experts who understand your situation. What if the stock market crashes? Market crashes are temporary. Inflation is permanent. During the 1970s inflation crisis, stocks eventually recovered and provided long-term protection. Cash and bonds never recovered their purchasing power. I can't handle the complexity. Start with one step. I began by simply moving money from CDS to dividend-paying utility stocks. Each small change built confidence for the next step. What if I make mistakes? The biggest mistake is doing nothing while inflation destroys your savings. Small mistakes can be corrected. The mistake of watching your purchasing power disappear is irreversible. The grocery store test. 6 months ago, I returned to the same grocery store where this journey began. I bought the same items that cost $127.43 2 years earlier. The new total, $142.89. But here's the difference. My income had grown from $3,400 to $4,800 monthly. Instead of that grocery bill representing 3.7% of my monthly income, it now represented 3%. For the first time in years, my standard of living was improving instead of declining. Standing in that checkout line, I thought about all the retirees who are still where I was 2 years ago, watching inflation destroy their financial security while feeling helpless to stop it. That's why I'm sharing Margaret's strategies. Every retiree deserves to know these options exist. Margaret's legacy. Last month, Margaret moved to assisted living. At 80, she made the transition with dignity and financial security because her inflation-proof strategies had continued working, even as her needs changed. Before she moved, we had one final coffee in her kitchen. "Harold," she said, "the most important thing I taught you wasn't about investments or real estate or stockpiles. It was about taking control instead of accepting defeat." She was right. The biggest change wasn't in my portfolio, it was in my mindset. Instead of feeling like a victim of economic circumstances, I learned to adapt and thrive regardless of conditions. "Inflation is like weather," Margaret continued. "You can't control it, but you can prepare for it. Most people just complain about storms. Smart people build strong houses and enjoy watching the rain." Her final piece of advice: teach someone else what I taught you. Knowledge shared is security multiplied. Your 5-step action plan. If this resonates with you, here's how to begin. Week 1, assessment. Calculate what percentage of your retirement funds are in fixed income investments, vulnerable to inflation. List your current income sources and whether they adjust with inflation. Week 2, education. Research dividend-paying stocks, REITs, and I-bonds. You don't need to become an expert, but understand the basics of how these tools protect against inflation. Week 3, professional consultation. Meet with a financial advisor who understands inflation protection strategies. Not all advisors are experienced with these techniques. So ask specific questions about their approach to inflationary periods. Week 4, first implementation. Take one concrete action. Move a portion of fixed income investments to dividend-paying stocks. Purchase your first I-bonds or research rental properties in your area. Week 5, build momentum. The hardest part is starting. Once you take the first step, each subsequent action becomes easier as you build confidence and see results. The real cost of waiting. Every month you delay implementing inflation protection. You lose purchasing power that can never be recovered. If inflation runs 8% annually, waiting 1 year to protect $100,000 in savings costs you $8,000 in purchasing power forever. The strategies Margaret taught me aren't complicated, but they require action. Knowledge without implementation is worthless during inflationary periods. Your future self is depending on decisions you make today. The Sunday dinner revelation. Every Sunday, I have dinner with my family. 6 months ago, my daughter noticed something different. "Dad, you seem so much more relaxed about money. What changed?" I told her about Margaret's strategies and how they'd transformed my financial security. Her response surprised me. "I wish I'd learned this 20 years ago. I'm just hoping Social Security and my 401k will be enough when I retire." That conversation led to teaching my children and grandchildren about inflation protection. They're now implementing these strategies decades earlier than I did, which will make them incredibly powerful over time. The knowledge Margaret shared with me is now protecting 3 generations of my family. The truth about inflation. Here's what they don't tell you in traditional retirement planning. Inflation isn't just higher prices. It's the systematic transfer of wealth from savers to debtors, from fixed-income investors to owners of real assets, from people who wait to people who act. Every period of high inflation creates winners and losers. The winners understand how to position themselves. The losers hope it goes away. Margaret taught me that you can choose which group you belong to. A personal promise. I'm sharing Margaret's strategies because I know there are thousands of retirees facing the same shock I experienced at that grocery store. You don't have to accept declining purchasing power as inevitable. You don't have to watch inflation destroy the retirement you worked decades to build. These 5 steps aren't theory. They're battle-tested strategies from someone who successfully navigated multiple inflationary periods and taught me to do the same. The tools exist. The knowledge is available. The only question is whether you'll take action to protect your financial future. Your golden years should be about enjoying the fruits of your labor, not worrying whether your money will last. Margaret proved it's possible to not just survive inflation, but to thrive during it. Now it's your turn to take control. Final words. Thanks for watching, everyone. If Margaret's story and strategies inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-world retirement wisdom. In the comments below, tell me, what was your grocery store receipt moment when you realized inflation was affecting your retirement? Let's start a conversation about protecting our financial futures together. And remember, in honor of Margaret Chen, who taught me that economic storms are temporary, but the strategies you build to weather them can protect you for life. Take action today. Your future self will thank you. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll dive deeper into specific investment strategies for inflationary periods. Until then, keep building your inflation-proof future. Remember, it's not about having more money. It's about ensuring the money you have maintains its power to provide the life you've earned. Stay strong, stay smart, and keep learning.